Let's roll. This is Countercharge, your podcast for ranks, flanks, and kings of war. Join your hosts as they delve into the world of Panithor and bring you worldwide coverage of all things Kings of War.
Welcome to Countercharge. I'm Dylan Scribner.
And I'm Rough Enough, and as promised, we are back to share our first impressions of 4th edition. You will have heard the episode where Dylan did a pretty good job, but I was pretty wiffle waffly all over the place with what I was going to take. And to be fair, I'm still pretty not sure, and we're going to hit on some of those things. But we're here to share our first impressions from 4th edition. I think, honestly, Dylan, we're probably 95% there. There may be a couple things we got wrong. It was such a fun pair of games because you obviously drove 2 hours to Memphis to play at War Room Hobbies with us. So maybe we kick off with overall impressions, and why don't you start?
The overall impression I had is it's still Kings of War. Just as some of the Mantic employees have been saying all along, it felt great. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some higher level players than me over the course of the next few weeks to come. When everybody gets the rules, they're going to point some things out that I haven't noticed yet. But as far as I can tell, it's Kings, baby.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Dylan. It 100% is still Kings of War. But I don't know about you, but the last year or so, I feel like I've been just going through the motions with 3.5. And I've just sort of been ready for something different. And it felt like I got an adrenaline shot when we played those games. I was like, what? You caught me out, and we'll talk about it on a couple things. I was like, wait, what? There's a lot of things that are emerging for me in terms of tactical play that I didn't maybe pick up from face value of just what I'm hearing, right? But on the table, amazing stuff. One of the things that was interesting, Dylan, you did record how long it took us to play our games, because from my end, it felt like the pace of play seemed faster. It felt like they got rid of some of the stuff that didn't add value to the game, but the strategy was still there, even deeper, even if it was a little less obvious. What were your thoughts on the pace of play?
So I timed both games, and they were on the clock. They were just north of 2 hours, though I think the longer one, I think we had talked for several minutes before I caught it, and it was at 2 hour 20. And then the first game was even less than that. It was just a few minutes past 2 hours. And that was with us stopping, looking at rules,
looking at our notes and talking it through and trying to figure out, does this make sense?
Right. Hyper analyzing pivots.
I was being a dickhead. I was like, oh, you sure you get that fit? This is the first game. But it was super fun. It was, we're going to talk about the different phases and what our thoughts are. But the one other thing that popped out to me right away is that shooting is still there. I mean, it's so important and can still be very impactful. Even though you're not removing units in the shooting phase, on the first couple turns, it is so much more effective. I mean, let me just say some units, and we'll talk about some of those units, can be more effective because of that +1 to hit if you're halted, right? We're going to talk about some of the games that you kind of just kept shooting. It added up really quick. What were your thoughts on shooting? Because, I mean, obviously I didn't have that much shooting. I just had 2 war engines.
I have several shots in the list I built, but it's kind of all spread out. None of it's real. None of it has the ability. It's all mid-range. So I don't really have the ability to pile on to one thing. But my thought process behind it was to soften targets, which was a little harder against your specific list because if you didn't have defense 6, you had higher horde nerve and stuff. But what I noticed is that not all shooting units are created equal. So what I mean by that is what we've been noticing in the releases is a lot of the shooting units came down in points because shooting's less effective in regards to taking stuff off the table and things like that. They took a -1 in their profile in most cases. Those units dropped a few points from what I've been seeing. But there are some unique cases to where they didn't take a -1 in their profile. So under the new rules, they actually hit better than they ever did before by getting their +1 to hit when halting. And those units did not receive such a reduction in cost as other units did.
It's interesting, too, that they just flipped the script. It used to be -1 to moving. Now it's +1 to standing still. Effectively, it's kind of the same thing, right? It isn't. I don't know. It felt different.
I'll tell you why. It's because that in those cases where the units like Ogre Boomers, Gecko Hunters, like I used, units like that did not receive the overall -1 in their profile, they can effectively utilize their own cover, because once you're in position in the game, you receive a +1, but if you're shooting over your own units into the enemy, the enemy has cover, right? But you've gotten a +1 from halting. So you're effectively ignoring cover, so to speak. And I think that's really going to benefit those units in the long run.
The last thing overall I wanted to touch on before we get into some of the more specific details, there's been a lot of discussion about, oh my gosh, the commanders are so expensive. I had 5 in my army, worth every freaking penny. Because they were amazing. Those commands, and I'm speaking from a guy with a basic list with only 2 commands, and I got to see firsthand what the salamanders can do. I don't know if I want to get into it now, but a lot of people grind about enhanced versus basic list. All right, yeah, you had what do you have, 4 commands, but you really only used 2 of them, right?
Now this was the way I had my list built personally. I only had 2 flame-bound targets. And the other, one of the commands was much less useful throughout the course of the game, is the +1 speed one. It is really good for positioning and stuff like that. I don't want to undersell it. But I really found myself I had 4 characters. I really found myself not really needing that in most turns. I didn't have really a good or useful target for that 4th character, if that makes sense.
My observation for me and you was that my 2 commands were maybe more universally useful and actually not difficult to achieve, right? And you have 4 commands, some that have real specific trait things, and you have the +1 defense, which is awesome. But it requires 2 successes. And if you have a bunch of champions, they only get the 2 dice. So you need 2 4s. That is not an easy task, right? And then I guess the other important piece, that as we're talking about commanders and why they're so expensive, it can fundamentally change the game for me, the fact they have unit strength. They're individuals too, so they get that free, basically free refacing in the movement phase. So they're still nimble, right? Well, I don't want to use the word nimble. They're still very mobile. I mean, honestly, we played one game, and having those characters won me the game by 1. So, I don't know. What were your thoughts on unit strengths on commanders?
I really like it. Unit strength 2 on warlords is so good. It's so good. It removes the issue that we always had. Early 2nd edition, everything was scored by cost of the unit. Right, so the 250, 300 point characters just reign supreme everywhere. Well, we had an overcorrection when we moved to unit strength, where individuals didn't get unit strength. So it quickly moved to, if you were sitting somewhere in the middle, if you were not either super like a Goblin Whiz level cost, or if you weren't hyper necessary for the strategy of the list, you didn't see an individual in those in the middle cases. So, I mean, it solves all those problems, because 300 point characters or 250 point characters you're still just unit strength 2, like any other warlord. And there are some warlords that are a lot cheaper than 250 points.
The bigot was 105 points.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think it solves those issues that we've had in the past.
Well, let's get into some specifics. We'll start with Army construction. Before we get there, I think it's important we refresh people, because I know on that episode I didn't really make it clear what I was taking, because at the end I was having all kinds of emotional distress about what to take. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my list. I'm not going to share all the magic artifacts. I did take some of those, but I switched those up between games. Honestly, they weren't that impactful because Dylan pretty much wiped out the units that had them before they even got to use them. Maybe I will mention a couple that are important, especially the two that are command related. One that moves your command range to 18 inches and one that gives an extra dice. So you can give that on a champion. But so I'll kick us off with the list. I did take goblins. I actually did have 2 battalions. But in the first battalion, I had 1 horde of sharp sticks, 1 horde of rabble, 2 rabble regiments, 2 legate regiments. So that's 6 unlocked so far. And then I grabbed 2 mob beast troops for 2 more unlocks. 2 mincer mobs, 2 mob pup launchers, 3 whizzes, 1 with Bane Chant, 1 with weakness, 1 with Alchemist Curse. I took a bigot. He's one that had the special extra 18-inch range on his commands, which I totally forgot to use. It's a lesson learned. I put too many points in artifacts. So that was my first battalion. My second battalion was a Sharpstick Horde and a Luggage Gang Regiment, a Mob Beast Pack Troop. That was just really to fill points. And then I took a Mincer Mob Regiment and a Flaggett, and he had the Banner of Command, which is really cool because that gives him an extra dice. So he's a 60-point guy, plus 15 for the Banner of Command, which allowed him to have 3 dice. Even though he's unit strength 1, he's a commander. So that was 21 units, and it was 2,500 points on the dot with 39 unit strength.
So I had I opened my first battalion with 2 Gekota warrior regiments and 2 Gekota hunter regiments, and then my specialists were 2 hordes of ceremonial guard. My support options for battalion 1 was 1 phoenix and 2 slashers. I did not upgrade them to fire drakes, so they just had bolt throwers. My heroes in that battalion was a Gekota Skylord, R-Tackle, which is why I was able to put hunters into core, and Ulatar, the new battle captain named character, who is so good. So good. I'm so happy about this character. I can't wait to take him to an event. If any Salamander players are listening, please try that character. He's very good. Battalion 2 is really simple. I just opened it with 2 warrior regiments, 80 points each, and then so I could take a hero, which was Rakawaz. The Oravicious is really good. And he went up 55 points total. He's 300 points now, but the utility he provides to the specialists part of the battle line is all the geckos already have vicious, but he can give, it's just straight aura. There's no requirements except it's aura. It's a melee. So you can run him with the slashers, and their 10 attacks on 3s with crushing 2 are now vicious. And then he can get it to the primary targets are the 2 ceremonial guard hordes. So really, really kind of a rock solid defensive list, which is kind of typically how I like to build my armies. Total units was 15, and I had 32 unit strength, if I remember correctly.
Well, the first thing I want to say about army construction, writing a list by hand sucks.
It took me back, when I was doing that, it took me back to my first GT ever in 2nd edition, 2016, Redstone Rumble.
You had it was a salamander with the aquarium plants?
Yeah, red primer, black wash. But I was I didn't even know Easy Army existed. That's how new I was. I mean, I didn't know how to paint. I sent the email. I sent the email with just I just topped out the units. And
Did Brian Priest say anything? He's like, it's fine.
It was, yeah, he never said anything to me. But yeah, it just kind of just brought back some nostalgia. So that part was fun. But yeah, it's definitely so different. It's different now.
Other thing that struck me is this is not easy mode anymore. Because before it's like, oh, I want to get these irregular units, or I want to take extra war engines or monsters. Oh, I'll just take hordes. At least for me personally, army construction was obvious. Oh, I'd take this and then I get this. A lot of those crutches are gone. I would always kind of say like list building was maybe like 30%, player skill was 70%. It may push it to like 40, 60 now.
I was just going to add on to that. I think that is that may be one contention that we will have to get past. That was one of the big things with Kings of War was the game's not won in the list building phase. And it's still not going to be, but it does add more depth to that part of the game. You do have to put more thought into the building of the list rather than finding out which regular unit is the most valuable. I personally enjoyed that change because, like I mentioned in that last recording, I've never really had a reason to use Gecko to Warriors. And I actually enjoyed using them during those games. And so that was super, super interesting to me.
Other thing about army building that we have to talk about is the tension, the dance between regiments and hordes. So on the regiments, they've moved to unit strength 2, right? And they get an unlock. Hordes are unit strength 4, and they also only get 1 unlock. So you have to decide, do you want to buy hordes that unlock unit strength cost efficiently? And I would argue they're more resilient, right? Like I had some hordes that were getting pounded, but now they're getting pounded by Gecko Warriors. But but if I recall, I had one Sharpstick horde that went toe to toe with 2 in the front and 1 on the side for like 3 turns. Now you're hitting on 5s. You're basically goblins, right? So I get that. If that would have been a regiment, they'd be dead, right? Like in 1 turn. So there's that. And then, but on the other side, you got the regiments, which, yeah, you're paying a little bit more for unit strength, but you have more scoring units and you have access to more unlocks. Talk to me about that, because you had a couple ceremonial guard hordes, but just talk to me about that as well.
It only came up a couple times. This particular point only came up a couple times, but we also only played 2 games. But splitting attacks is going to be massive, I feel like. When it comes up, it may not come up all the time. There may be more situations than not that it's super obvious that you just need to dump all your attacks into 1 unit. But when those situations do arise, it's going to be pivotal for high-level competitive games. So that cannot be ignored, that they have double the attacks of regiments. So that's a major comparison between the two.
A lot of them, at least mine, were cheaper than they were before, and they have a nerve bump. They're more durable.
For sure.
We'll talk about unit strength in general. Everything in the game has unit strength, including the war engines, including the individuals. I can't understate how different that makes it. Because in previous games, Dylan and I'd be like, oh, our tackle? I don't care about her. Go away. But she's unit strength 1 now. She's what, speed 6? No, she's speed 7, right?
Speed 7.
Yeah, she's an individual, right? So she gets the free refacing in the movement phase. She's going to get a pivot on a 14-inch move. She can get her unit strength 1 where it needs to be. Again, I had 2 mop-up launchers in the list. They're sitting back there. In the second game, they're sitting back on a token.
Yep.
You sort of have to go get them, right? It's just funny because it makes some things relevant in scenario play.
Well, it also brings back strategies that haven't existed for a long time, like a War Machine Hunter. When's the last time you've seen a character kitted out to fly over, to get around and kill War Machine?
Been a long time.
And part of that was from War Machines not being like super great. That was something that the RC had struggled with all through 3rd, was they were a little too strong at the beginning of 3rd, and they kind of brought them down too much, and then they split the cover rolls, and it was just a problem. But grain of salt, all things being equal, we only played 2 games. So we could be completely off base, but I think the need for maybe a quick character for those objective holders, backline objective holders, I think that strategy has returned.
Let's talk about warlords in particular, right? I think it can't be understated, like 3 dice for a 1 success command is pretty good, right? It's pretty good. Yeah. And then also their unit strength 2. And in my case, in your case, one of your characters, our tackle's not a warlord, was she?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, but she changed your army construction to allow you to bring the hunters in his core, right? I had the big get, which everybody crapped on. It gives rally 1 to the Green Horde trait. So I have 8 units. Now, did I remember to use it ever in 2 games? No, I did not. But, lesson learned. For 105 points, I mean, he's not that expensive. He's a warlord, yes. But I think he was bringing something to the table, right? I am a big fan. So, final thoughts on army construction?
All positive. I mean, the only downside I can see, it's not really something I view as a downside, but I think points levels is going to be a point of contention for the community. Like, even at 2,300, you have to make decisions. We played 25, and I still there was still a couple more things I wanted.
Yeah, and you got outdropped by like 6, right? And your unit strength was respectable though, wasn't it?
32.
Yeah, and I only had 39. It's weird because I was going to say that the 2,500 was the new 2,300, but I'm not entirely sure because from a goblin perspective, I took a lot of things that were maybe more elite, like I hate to say Luggets are elite, but compared to regular goblins, they're a lot more expensive. I took Mincer mobs, so if I had to play 2,300, I'd probably just have to downgrade some of those things. That's a trick with the goblin army I found was I have to balance okay, that's just a meat shield versus what can actually do damage. Because the big thing is like the Strider banner that the flag guy had is the Strider aura is gone. So, if I'm charging, I'm going to be charging a lot of times. It's going to be hindered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get into the movement phase. And let's just talk about that. I think the movement phase, I found the extra pivots just made everything awesome and super mobile. But on the same token, I also really appreciate that he didn't give us the extra pivot on the charge. Now, that gives Nimble something to do. Nimble gives you an extra pivot on the charge. But there was a lot of discourse when there's the big scrums, the multi-charging, like figuring, okay, what order are you going to go? How are you going to do it? Because on a charge, you only have the one pivot. But getting things from point A to point B, chef's kiss. And we'll talk a little bit about that, how great it is in the scenarios when we talked about scenarios. But what were your thoughts on movement?
The spirit of the old movement rules is still there. It's just, it greater differentiates shambling units, and it removes the usefulness of the word nimble on flying units. I've yet to see a flying unit with nimble because it's almost not necessary, because you don't need the extra pivot on a charge anyway because you're flying. Then if everything has the extra pivots during the move, you still have that utility on speed 10. It just that part just goes back to cleaning up the rules, less ink on the page, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I share a lot of the same thoughts. It just, with the infantry being able to move around like that, and this may be a negative point for some people, but if you deploy poorly that first turn, you can move you can advance with 2 pivots, so you can get out of your own way, and it just felt better.
I threw a Mincer mob off on a left flank in one game, and I was like, okay, you're coming storming at me with a bunch of slashers. I'm like, yeah, we're not hanging out around for this. We're ducking behind the forest. Pivot 10 inches, let's go, right? And just kind of get out of dodge, because you also had a bunch of shooting coming at me. So yeah, it's awesome. We really need to get into 2 rules, withdraw and feint. And I would say, let's start with withdraw, because feint is a better version of withdraw. But as we played, it was obvious that if I went to the game playing like I normally play, throwing chaff in there, trying to tie you up, that's the best way to deal with chaff. Just get rid of it. Oh man, withdraw really, really, really makes you think about, here's my meat shield, and I got my heavy hitters behind it. I mean, and I also love the command that lets you on your head, where I can put Luggets behind.
So cool.
Sharp sticks, and then I'm gonna make them height 3 for the charge. Basically, I guess it gives them the leaper rule. But yeah, it was amazing. Didn't get it off very much, but once you're in combat, it's sticky combat and you're staying there. But you have this withdraw. It is a get out of jail free card, and when we get to feint, we'll talk about where you got me good, man. I was like, Oh, it was like an uppercut, knocked me out. I was like, you got to be crapping me. I didn't see that coming at all. Again, it's one of those things where it's a gotcha when it happens, but then you're like, oh, I get it now, and it won't be a gotcha again. But
made me consider that when they use the term sticky combat, that they shouldn't have described it that way, because sure, you can't escape into another combat with that same unit, but you have tactical options. Support that unit with other unit. I mean, you can completely get them out of the way. There will be some edge cases where you can't get them out of the way, but for the most part, the rules are designed in a way to where your chaff will never be in your way. And maybe this is kind of what I was thinking of. Maybe countercharge becomes a table strategy rather than a rule. You withdraw, get out of the way, and bring in your second line. Maybe they charge you, you withdraw and bring in your second line as a counter charge, quote unquote.
Well, let's talk about Feint. We're all the way on the left flank. I've got a Mincer Mob regiment. You have they're hunters, I think.
Yep.
And then behind that, you have a slasher. So my play was going to stick a Maw Beast troop into the hunters, lock you down. So there was basically right behind the Maw Beast, there's like a regiment of Mincer Mob. But then over to the right, there's another one with my flank exposed because you can't get there because you only have one pivot on the slasher. And you have the Feint rule, which I was thinking Feint was like mostly going to be cavalry. So I didn't even think about it, right? Lesson learned. Got it. But so Feint lets you withdraw and pass the nerve for free, and then allows you to reface any way you want. Now that didn't come to play here, but did some withdrawing in several games, and you gotta be careful. Like I tried to withdraw a hero. They only had like an 11 nerve, and she had like 2 wounds on her. I failed it. She died. You get to re-roll it if you have inspiring there, but this was an uninspiring character because this person was a whiz. They died. But you auto-passed on Feint, pushed him back through. You actually cleared the slasher, so you're not even wavered. You then charge the slasher into the now exposed flank of the Mincer Mob. Oh, and then to add salt to the wound, the Gekatoa hunters then shoot the chaff. One of the things that's interesting is you can, if depending on circumstance, you can use, I think, shooting to kind of get into that grind as that first line, knowing that you can back up. I mean, I don't know how you do it, but if you got a trombone, someone charges it. If for some reason they don't kill it, roll snake eyes, do that withdraw and hope to pass it, and then give them 12 shots on force. But just moving in general, I don't know. It was awesome. I so dynamic is the word I would use.
Feint rule itself isn't what allowed me to get out of the way. The withdrawal rule allowed me to get out of the way. Feint just guaranteed that I would pass the check, right? Because you don't even have to roll the check.
But that's huge, because some of these units are low nerve, and if you've already been in a grind for a turn, you have some wounds. Oh, crap, a 7's going to pop you. If it's real chaff, maybe that doesn't matter. You want it dead. But in your case, you had a nice little shooting unit. I believe it was Scrum Vermin had responded on one of our posts for some court, like, for the topic of the month for November. He brought up that, like, you can now get your stuff back through and behind something else, and maybe you can heal them up, regenerate them, whatever, and kind of get them out of harm's way. And I think that's cool. We'll talk about it in combat, but I think cavalry, people have been poo-pooing on cavalry. I think, yeah, they're not maybe the easiest thing to use, but man, if you can play it right, I think you can hit like a ton of bricks. So, any more comments on movement before we move into range?
I think we covered the high points.
Well, let's get into range. I think we touched on it when we were just talking about overall. I mean, shooting is important. I didn't have a lot of shooting in my list other than 2 Maw Pup launchers, but even the 2 Maw Pups forced you to remember they were there. You have those Gekato hunters and warriors are like defense 3, right? So like you don't want to get hit by Maw Pups because they normally hit on 5s. They have reload, and then they have if you're giving a halt command, which you have to do, they're going to hit on 4s, right? And it's blasty 3 on 3 dice, right? So, but no piercing. Gukatoa warriors, man, like that's a perfect unit to hit. You're defense 3 or your Scorchwing character, right? Like once I nailed her for 7 or 8, you're like, oh, I better go hide behind the Phoenix and get that ray into life. On the flip side, you shot the piss out of me with a bunch of stuff. And like in both games, you basically took a horde out of play. They were being wavered, like on turn 3, 4. All I can really do is just back them up. And then eventually you get them, right? Because eventually all you have to do is send in You hit them once, they're already devastated. And yeah, you did kill stuff through shooting.
My specific style of shooting would not have taken off a lot of things, even in 3.5. It is specifically to soften targets. It definitely did that. Even your mincers, I was able to, just because I had 2 regiments and a character, all with vicious range, I was able to, they scouted up, and then I was able to start shooting you on 4s almost right off the bat. So, that's 25 shots. I was able to even, get a couple wounds on your defense 6 at times, which is exactly what I wanted, because those mincers only are nerve 16. So you only really need a couple to get the job started. Over in the middle of the board, where your hordes were, that Phoenix shooting on 3+ with halting, it was just so tasty. It was good. It was good. And then I had the Scorchwing character. I had Fireball from a command. Like, it was a deceptive amount of shooting that allowed me to kind of bottleneck you by wavering some of your center stuff, and helped quite a bit, I think.
Thinking about the game, and I've started to think about I need to have some more shooting in the list. Man, if I could just put 4 of those mop-up launchers in, I mean, I have a real shot at taking out. I mean, if I can roll good, there is a potential to knock out, at the very least, waver a unit. But I mean, what's the nerve on the Phoenix? Is 17?
17 or 18.
So, like, in a couple turns, I had him up to some wounds. It is still possible, because also when you get close, you're like, oh, I'm going to back away. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to get behind the, you know what I mean? Like, it does change your behavior. And on my end, 100%, that horde that was just getting hammered is like, okay, guys, okay, enough. And I'm backing away. So the other thing we need to mention is that, like, you mentioned the Phoenix as a superstar. I also did play against Northern Alliance in the game. I still think that's a mistake, because they hit on 4s, but 3s if they're standing still. So you basically just surge them up. Or just get them in the right spot where they can shoot, and then surge them into combat. But if they, what do they have? Did they have 18? I don't remember if they was 18 attacks, but they were money. In fact, they were hitting on 5s in combat and 4s in shooting, sometimes 3s. So, like, yeah, it's a no-brainer and I kind of hope it is correct, because it feels like it really makes them different than a lot of other large infantry in the game.
I think it was Nerve Check said that they reached out to clarify, and that is, they received the answer yes, that it is correct. But I mean, everyone was surprised, like, oh, the Elemental's hitting on 5s in combat, but it allows them to shoot on 4s without being overly costed. Like, if they shot on 4s and meleeed on 4s, they'd be so expensive.
And they're fearless, right?
And they're fearless.
So let's talk about that. So if they decide to withdraw and they don't roll enough to clear the unit behind them, they would pop through the unit and they would be wavered, except for their feelers. They wouldn't. They would still be able to shoot. If you have a height 2 unit to protect them now, they can shoot over it with cover.
Yep. Utility is definitely there.
I think there's some utility in having a small, and I've been playing with lists. I think that's going to be the hard part. We talked about the wing it in particular, getting some of those are 125 points, I think. Man, getting some speed in that list. I'm really am going to put some chariots, I think, in the list too. Let's talk about chariots, man. They're juicy. I know they only come as a regiment. They're juicy, dude. They don't take, obviously, the Rampage and the Slayer. They're in between, right? So they don't take those penalties against. They also don't care about phalanx, because they're literally not listed. Because now the way phalanx is worded, it says units to the front that are what? Large cavalry, or flyers are hindered. So that means you lose all your TC and you're -1. So you don't even have to explain it doesn't stack with hindered, because you're already hindered. Maybe the most cleanest change to a rule I've ever seen. Chariots, though. I mean, come on, man. I mean, to be fair, I had the mincer mobs. They're also chariots. They're not speed 9 or 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
They're speed 5. Chug, 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 chug. And I had 3 of them, and I think in every game, you were able to talk about movement. You were able to get to the flanks easily. No problem. And because, I mean, at some point, I'm surrounded. So, like, what am I going to do? So
I think I even made a triple charge in both games, at least once, just because it's exactly what I thought it was. I understand the concerns about limiting the charges per facing. I understand the concerns, but if you want to, you can still triple charge stuff. Like, it's still there.
Get it in flanks and stuff. Or take the 2 in the front, knowing that the next turn, the one will wrap around and make room for another friend.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is what you did. I get the concern, but I also think that's partly more tactical. It's trying to be a little bit easier rather than just throw a bunch of stuff in the front and obliterate it.
That may even play into, I don't know if tabling an opponent is going to be as common anymore. Like, I mean, even in that second game, I mean, you made a few. Well, I kind of paid you, but you made a few mistakes, but then I kind of paid you back with some snake eyes on that following turn. So, like, I wasn't really fully able to capitalize on those, but we were nowhere even near. Like, at the end of the both games, there was a lot of unit strength left on it. Now, we were playing 2,500 points, so there was a couple more units on each side than normal. I think that, it may be too early to tell if that's a overall positive versus 3.5.
Yeah, I'm wondering, though, like, if I look at my list, because of the way the structure is set up now, I have to take more unit strength. But most of the core are 2 or 4, right? There's a few unit strength 1, like the Maul Beast troop. My 2,300.3.5 list was not going to be 39 unit strength. It might have been like 32 or something, right? Had about the same amount of units, but I think I had more unit strength. And that played out on the table. When I did lose, I still had a lot of unit strength left. I just didn't have it in the right spot at the end of the game, right? In both games we played, I didn't kill a ceremonial guard horde. I mean, I engaged it a couple times where I might as well just throw something in here. There's no way especially once the Mutzer went down. You play it smart. He doesn't care about phalanx, but he does care about being hindered. So you put him on the edge of the woods and make me charge hindered and stuff. So I also, you talking about sticky combat. Yes, you can still leave with the withdrawal rule, but you can't leave and charge somebody else, which I think just makes it just makes sense, as Jeremy would say. But you also can't leave without a risk unless you have feint. And if you've got some damage on you and you got a small regiment, maybe they're only like 15 unit strength, you got 4 or 5 damage, you gotta be careful. Gotta be careful, because I did lose some units. So
going back to movement, there was something I noticed that was making me think that I do think this is something I don't like. When I was watching you do your wild charges, it didn't affect you. It didn't affect you, but it did make me think that I think the wild charge change is antithetical to the spirit of Kings of War. Kings of War is a game of intention. I mean, and it may be that Mantic didn't intend it to be a game of intention. And if that's the case, then that's something we'll have to come to grips with. But it is a game of intention. And like pre-measuring is everything, and the risk that they wanted to bring into that directly, like, I understand the risk, like with the risk with withdrawal, chef's kiss. The risk with wild charge, it goes against the spirit of the game because of the game of intentions. If you need to multi-charge something, if you need to double charge something, and these 2 units that you have cannot fight by themselves, you declare a double charge, one makes it and one doesn't. Now this one has to fight by itself when it cannot fight by itself, and you're basically losing 2 units because you failed one wild charge roll. To me, that is not how Kings of War is supposed to work. I don't know if the playtesters didn't give Alessio enough pushback on that. That is one change I do not agree with.
Well, I didn't end up using it that way, except for the Maw Beast one. He was in no danger. So I was like, we'll throw for, I don't know what it was, a 14-inch charge. We'll try that. And if I get it, I get it. If I don't, cool. I do something else. I go hide behind the woods. In the case of Luggets, what I was attempting to do sometimes was just keep him behind a meat shield, declare the charge. Now, obviously, that meant the meat shield had to go with him, because even when I give them on your head to see over, they got to go with them, right? I can't charge through them. It was, I even told you sometimes, I said, look, at this point, I got treated as wild charge 1.
Yeah, wild charge D3 is wild charge 1 unless you have to have it to win a game.
To that point, maybe get rid of the variable and just give us wild charge 2 and just give us a number.
Or figure out another way to introduce risk if that's your goal.
I know it's going to sound crazy because we don't want to make things more complicated, but you charge the maximum distance, cool. But you have to roll, and if you don't get the roll, maybe you lose 5 attacks because you end up having to hoof it a little bit harder. You're like running, and when you get there, you're tired.
They never said that there was an issue with the original way. I think Kyle on that live just said he just wanted more risk with that rule.
there is a lot of risk. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. So the point is like, yeah, I get the risk. That's fine. You want me to roll first on the dice? It's not dissimilar from Warhammer. That was what it was in Warhammer. You had to declare, and we had, well, in that one, it wasn't really wild charge. It was just random charge distances.
But you knew what was coming out of the oven with that because there was no pre-measuring in.
Yeah. It was all speculation on your part, and there was a random part to it, but you also had a base part you added. So you know what? I don't disagree with you. Maybe the answer is don't make it random, just make it a number and be done with it. And if you want to give them wild charge D3, just give them wild charge 2. Because, I mean, that's what Luggets have a problem with, right? They're only speed 5. Just a little bit faster than most infantry. But, like, the Skaven or the Ogres, like, those guys are all speed 6. And I'm talking myself out of it now because, really, the play for Luggets, I think, in this edition, and I'm going to try it in my new version. I made a new list with troops instead of regiments. So we talked about it. Great, I have regiments. They gave me 5 more attacks, and they're like, whatever, 40 points more. Or 35 points more. I'm going to take troops, put them as the second line, and just on your head, or hopefully I'm just playing against ogres, right? And then just charge. To be fair, the goblins, those guys hit on force. So, I think I proved my point that, force sucked, but it is what it is.
I mean, you did a lot of grinding. I mean, I think that all the rules play into each other nicely, like limiting 2 charges to a facing, the line of sight, everything, it all plays in together so nicely because like there was one thing I thought, like playing against your list is like you can do combat goblins just because it's I think the edition is going to be more grindy. It's going to be more infantry on infantry combats, and that there was a lot of times you were putting the hurt on a lot of things.
Command that gives you the dogs. It's now 6 dogs, hits on 4s with crushing 1. And I have 2 womp-up launchers that can give vicious. And I had 5 people out there throwing the dice. 2 of them with 3 dice. Like, I didn't fail that many commands. What I did fail was Bane Chant. I missed the Conjuring Staff. It's like, oh my gosh, I failed that so many times.
I think it's going to be nice.
Instead of calling it sticky combat, I'm going to call it protracted combat. Because we got into scrums, and they were there for a while. The big Gribblies have a lot of crushing, but there's not a lot of, like, crushing 2. I mean, I played some Hearthguard. They had crushing 2, but there's not a lot of, like, crushing strength. And Bane Chant, the loot's gone, so that would have been a perfect thing to give the standard bearer, right? And I also only had 2 sources of inspiring, which I think did burn me a few times, but, I loved it, though. It was great games. Well, next let's talk about nerve, because that's another big change. Obviously we don't have the wavering value anymore. We just have a route value. And in shooting, if you beat their route value, but they're not devastated, you just waver them unless they're fearless. But I also really like the fact that it's going to be really hard to lose a more robust unit in shooting, at least in the first couple turns. But you still have to be careful with things like gargoyles or Mobbies packs or Lugged troops, because you can totally snipe them out. Just in general, if you've got some big bulky units, you're not going to lose them on the first turn. Now, you're still going to take some damage, and you better have a way to get rid of it or back them up to have them go do something else. Oh, I got... did you ever play the Ninja Turtles game on the NES?
Yeah.
The very first one from Konami in 1989. So you had 4 turtles, and as soon as you got one of the turtles really, really beat up, you had to stop playing him and put him away for a while and let the other turtles fight. That's what I felt like. Like, okay, this horde's got to go back over here and go find the pizzas. But the thing I really liked about Nerve, Dylan, I want to hear your impression on it. The 6/6 was awesome. It's
not always going to waver now, but the extra damage is kind of elegant. We were fortunate enough to have it happen a couple times throughout our 2 games. It was kind of meaningful because I remember one time I rolled boxcars against you and then got 6 wounds because the boxcars couldn't kill because it didn't reach your nerve, but I did 6 extra damage to that unit, which allowed me to kill it on the following turn.
Now, when you devastate somebody, half your attacks rounding down, half your unit strength. Okay. So, you have a horde? Oh, it's only worth 2 now. Like, that's a huge thing. Especially in my list, I had no heal. So, if you get me to devastated, they're devastated for the whole game until you kill them. So yeah, the double six was really cool. It did take us a minute to look at the notes from Michigan GT and kind of understand, okay, well, how does this trigger? And I'm not entirely sure we got it exactly right, but well, let's jump in and talk about scenarios. We did play Control and we played Pillage, and someone might argue, oh, well, you're playing this. Yes, we played a couple unit strength ones. I think from my end, I just wanted to see how that would play out. And also those are two scenarios I'm very familiar with. To me, they felt the same. The difference is, especially in even in Control, but Pillage in particular, you are more mobile with your extra pivots and the individuals refacing shenanigans, or even moving war engines around, that you can really have more control over putting that unit strength where you need it to be. But what were your thoughts on the scenarios?
I mean, we played 2 unit strength scenarios because that's a little bit my fault. I kind of wanted to put myself at a little bit of a disadvantage there, just to see kind of if there was any disparity between how goblins were going to operate with this list building design, and if a lesser unit strength faction would be able to compete. And I think that the answer to that question is yes.
100%. And I went into it thinking, I remember telling you, I said, oh, I think armies like goblins are going to run away with it because their unit strength is, cheap. An 80-point rabble regiment, right? At unit strength 2, that's 40 points of unit strength. There's a lot of armies that don't have that access to that kind of points per unit strength. And I thought, oh, for sure. But you know what? You proved me wrong. I mean, I won Control basically because I had one of the champions in the right spot by dumb luck. And then I lost Pillage for sort of the same thing. I have 5 characters. I need to use them, right? And I didn't. So if you play it right, regardless if you have a more elite army or a horde army, I'm air quoting their hordes, not hordes like as in the unit size, but just the number of models and units. I think both are viable. Yeah. I'm interested to try the rest of them, though. There's 20 scenarios. I'm ready to give a shot. We wanted to say on the unit strength thing, though, a thing like Invade, I think you would do great in because your stuff's more mobile than mine in terms of speed, right? You're faster. And you have a lot of things that charge 14. And I think the scenario might have been the least interesting thing about it, though. The sum is greater than all its parts. It's like, oh, the nerf testing and stuff is so cool. You can get wavered in shooting if they hit your route value but don't devastate you.
That's another point for hordes. I mean, if you're taking nothing but regiments, get ready for just a few pop shots to waver your unit.
Yeah, and I only had 5 regiments to 3 hordes, and I think there's an argument to be made, maybe split it down the middle. Even if that means you're losing a little bit of unit strength, your unit strength's a little bit more robust. They're harder to kill. That's going to be the $1 million question is, do I want more unit strength with the hordes? And I was struggling to figure out how to allocate the attacks because when you hit me 2 in the front and 1 in the side, well, I can't reform, right? Because I'm engaged in 2 types. I have 30 attacks on that sharp stick horde. That's the part that Math Hammer may need. I may need some Math Hammer help. And also, don't forget, I have dogs. Okay, where do I allocate the dogs? So yeah, that's one that I'm going to have to spend some time thinking about because you also had to do some allocation of attacks as well.
Yeah, I mean I don't think it ever blew anything out of the water. I think when I did it in that first game, and I was going for a Hail Mary to clear some unit strength off. But it didn't work. But it is going to matter. Like if it ends up not mattering in the vast majority of high level games, I will be surprised.
Final thoughts about our first 2 games of 4th edition.
Refreshing. I've been saying all along, assume positive intent. I've been trying to be positive. If you live positive, your life is better in all aspects, even simple games and hobbies, and and it was super refreshing to play the game and to kind of, I guess be vindicated a little bit. I don't know if that's the right word. The game is what I thought it was. It is still Kings of War. It's a beautiful game. It's elegant, and simple at the same time. straightforward as it always was. There are going to be some things that we'll just simply have to learn and get used to. Because there are, like we've kind of explained, there are some things that interact differently now. But it was so good. I'm so happy.
Same. One of my takeaways is that I've got to pay more attention because everything's so mobile. It is a little bit easier for you to get in the right position for that devastating charge. So it's interesting because on one hand you're like, oh, I only can charge 2, right? It's not as hard as you think. Well, maybe I'm a dummy, but you didn't seem to have a problem getting a flank because you know what I mean. Like every time I turn around, you were in a flank. So I think it's I think it's going to be, if you don't want it to be a really protracted combat, you do want to wait for the hammer to fall by bringing that other unit in position and the coup d'etat, bam, and just knock them out. I'm trying to think, did we have any combats like that where something, that wasn't a throwaway unit? I don't think anything just died in one round of combat. I think they all stuck around for at least a couple turns.
Ulatar one-shotted some things.
He's new, right?
Yeah, he's new.
Did you already tell people what he did?
5 attacks on 3s with Blast 2. He's a miniature Grakagamok.
I mean, the only saving grace is he's an individual, right? So he doesn't double his attacks.
He doesn't double his attacks in the flanks, and yeah, everything that hits is doubled. It's it's so good.
And you're hit on 3, so it's a 66% chance to make it. So I'm ready this week to get some more games in. Have you been playing around with lists and been thinking about construction? I've been doing a lot of that.
Oh yeah,
I have been doing more list theory than I have in the last 6 months. It's a whole new army construction. It's the same game with some new rules. And at the end of the day, it's still Kings of War, and I love it. And I'm super ready.
Thanks for listening, and remember, keep countercharging.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Countercharge. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at counterchargepodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter @countercharge15, or by commenting on the Countercharge Kings of War podcast Facebook group. If you enjoy the show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Until next time, keep countercharging. Music is a composition of Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.